everyone, I'm Nicole Killian coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're watching right now.
This primary election is over, but now the real work begins.
Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney concedes defeat in her primary battle in the state, what she's now promising as she looks ahead and how former President Trump is responding. Rudy Giuliani faces a special grand jury in Georgia as part of the state's 2020 election investigation. The former New York City mayor is the highest profile member of former President Trump's inner circle to appear before grand jurors. Plus,
if there was an invitation to participate, I would consider it.
Former Vice President Pence says he would consider appearing before the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack if the panel summoned him. How the committee is responding to his remarks, plus the latest on the investigation. But we begin tonight with the dramatic defeat of Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney. The January 6th committee vice chair has lost her re-election bid to a candidate endorsed by former President Trump. Harriet Hageman beat Congresswoman Cheney by nearly 40 points. The trial attorney has repeated former President Trump's false claims about the 2020 election. Results are also in for primaries in Alaska. Senator Lisa Murkowski and former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin are moving on to the general election in their respective races. Congresswoman Cheney is now looking toward her future after her defeat. In her concession speech, she warned about the threat to democracy from former President Trump.
2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote. I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear. But it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election. It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic. That was a path I could not and would not take.
For more on this, Robert Costa joins us now. He is CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent. Bob, Congresswoman Cheney was asked about a potential 2024 presidential run on the Today Show this morning. Let's take a listen.
Are you thinking about running for president?
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
Let's go back to
what else do we know about which way Cheney might be leaning?
Nicole, good to be with you from Jackson, Wyoming. It's clear, based on my conversations with Congresswoman Cheney's allies, that she is seriously considering a 2024 presidential bid. It was hard not to hear that message and that fact when we were outside last night in Jackson, Wyoming, as she delivered her concession speech, which was really also a speech of defiance about this moment in the Republican Party, defiance of Trumpism and its grip on the GOP. She would be a potentially formidable candidate should she run for the Republican nomination, in the sense that she has a national fundraising base, a high profile from the January 6th committee, and support from traditional Republicans who know her and the legacy of her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney. But that all being said, even though she would have the money and the stature to run at a national level, this is still, as Wyoming showed last night, and here in other red states, Trump's party, and the path to the nomination would certainly likely be an uphill one.
She has also started a PAC in the wake of her loss. How could those funds be used?
She raised about $13 million, more than that, for this congressional bid. So now defeated, she's able to turn her federal money into a federal political action committee, a PAC, where she can spend that money potentially on a presidential campaign. She's also looking to start an advocacy group. Some of these nonprofit groups politicians also start on the side to push for issues they care about. She outlined in her speech on Tuesday night how she's focusing on the threat to American democracy from her point of view, from the former president, Donald Trump. She is someone, though, who is going to have to figure out, if she is going to run for the Republican nomination, how does that actually play out? Is she able to win states? I mean, somewhere like New Hampshire has traditionally been a place where someone like Senator John McCain, more moderate wing of the Republican Party, has gained traction in presidential contests. What's intriguing to me as a reporter is that some of my sources inside the consultant world in the Republican Party who don't love Trump are saying she could run potentially as an independent. Now, she said last night she wants to be a Republican. She said she is a Republican, but as an independent, she would have a lot more freedom to build a coalition that was inclusive of Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
And turning to Alaska, Senator Lisa Murkowski and former Governor Sarah Palin are moving on to the general election in their respective races. What do you think the success of these two ideologically different candidates says about the direction of their party?
Palin is someone who in 2008 captured the hearts of many in the Republican base. They saw her as someone who spoke to their values. And she began this politics of populism and grievance inside the Republican Party in the wake of the bank bailouts in 2008, then the rise of the Tea Party movement in 2009 and 2010. So Palin, in a sense, was a precursor to Trump and the way he seized on issues like immigration and trade to rise to the Republican nomination in 2016. So it's unusual for a former vice presidential candidate to not run for office since 2008 and then suddenly win a House seat primary in 2022, 14 years later. But it's not that unusual when you look at it through the scope of the Republican Party's transformation since the early years of President Obama's time in the White House. When you look at Senator Lisa Murkowski, she's faced foils before from the right. She's defeated them. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on Alaska, though we still don't know the real counts. Palin's projected to win. Murkowski not projected to win, projected to make the general election because Alaska has a ranked choice voting system, which would be another whole show to get into with you about the details of ranked choice in Alaska. But we'll give our viewers a break and not do that today.
Yeah, it is quite a lot to get through. But one last question for you, because I know you've also been covering the former president's legal challenges, which seem to be mounting between the January 6th investigation, the DOJ probe, the New York Attorney General investigation. But many of his endorsed candidates are also winning in these primaries. How is the former president juggling this split screen dynamic, if you will, and could it affect his own calculus about when and whether he announces for 2024?
The question for the former president and many of his allies now, Nicole, is Trump winning? Yes, he is, in the sense that his endorsed candidates are winning many primaries, but Trumpism is also winning in a sense. The policies and agenda he outlined are now pervasive inside the Republican Party. So just because a Trump-backed candidate is winning doesn't necessarily mean that Trump himself is automatically in position to win the Republican nomination in 2024. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has echoed Trump in many ways. He's campaigning for Doug Mastriano, an election denier running for governor in Pennsylvania, and others like Kerry Lake in Arizona running for governor there. And you see in Trumpism across the party also even people who are a little bit different in their persona, like Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, trying to appeal to the Trump base with their own overtures. So Trump, as he looks toward a 2024 bid, has to figure out, based on conversations with his aides and friends, whether he gets in now, September, October, November, to try to, in a sense, freeze the field from others who are rivals who have his views being competition for him come 2024.
Robert Costa, thanks so much for your insight and safe travels back.
Thank you.
Former New York City Mayor and Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani faced questions by a grand jury in Georgia investigating former President Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election in the state. Prosecutors questioned the former personal attorney of Mr. Trump behind closed doors. Giuliani's lawyers were informed he was a target of the investigation earlier this week. Multiple allies of the former president have also been subpoenaed, including South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. For more on this, Tia Mitchell joins us now. She is the Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Good to see you, Tia. Why do Georgia prosecutors want to talk to Giuliani in this investigation?
Well, at the time, immediately after the 2020 general election, Rudy Giuliani was acting as one of President Trump's personal attorneys. He traveled to Georgia and attended 3 different meetings of the Georgia legislature where he talked about the election. He spreaded what we know now is misinformation, unfounded allegations of election fraud. And so now that the special grand jury is investigating those attempts to overturn the election, they've asked him to testify, which he did today. And they've also let him know it's not just that they think he's a witness who has information, he's a potential target who could be indicted.
And we know that Mr. Giuliani spent about 6 hours today at that courthouse in Atlanta. What did we learn, if anything, about what he may have told this special grand jury behind closed doors?
Yeah, we don't know much. When Giuliani and his attorney, they arrived kind of through the front door, and then there was this big kind of media frenzy, but they left kind of out of a side entrance. They did not say much. His attorney, when he spoke to the media after those 6 hours, basically said, you know, we were told to come and we did it, but the grand jury is secret and we're going to keep it that way. So we don't know how many questions he answered. We don't know, for example, if he pled the fifth or claimed attorney-client privilege at any point. And right now, we don't know what the grand jury asked of him.
Trump campaign legal advisor Jenna Ellis is also being ordered to appear before the grand jury next week. Why do they want to hear from her?
So for Jenna Ellis, they believe that she has information. Number one, they believe that she helped set up some of these meetings that Giuliani and other Trump supporters attended in Georgia. But they also believe that she was one of the people writing memos and things that outlined these the fake elector scheme, where in Georgia and other states, there was this alternate slate of electors that were intending to kind of take away Joe Biden's electoral votes and, if possible, replace them with votes in swing states for Donald Trump. So again, they believe that she was one of the people pushing that fake elector scheme, and they want to talk to her about that as well.
And briefly bring us up to speed. Where does the Georgia investigation stand overall? And do we know when the Fulton County DA could complete this probe?
So the special grand jury does have an expiration date. And so right now, what we've seen from the grand jury is they are getting closer and closer to President Trump's inner circle, people like Rudy Giuliani, people like Ms. Ellis, who you mentioned, people like Attorney John Eastman. And they're subpoenaing a lot of Trump's inner circle, trying to get that testimony. They've also subpoenaed, for example, Governor Brian Kemp and other elected officials in Georgia. The grand jury will not necessarily indict, but the grand jury will kind of weigh the evidence and come up with recommendations for where they think this investigation should go, who they think, if anyone, should possibly face charges. That'll come in the next few months. Right now, they're still in that fact-finding stage where they're getting testimony from different people. We think that's going to go on for several more weeks.
All right, Tia Mitchell, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Former Vice President Mike Pence is criticizing fellow Republicans who have attacked the FBI over the Mar-a-Lago search, why he's urging them to not go after federal officials as he demands answers about the raid on the former president's home. Stay with us. You're streaming Red and Blue.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me?
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Former Vice President Mike Pence says he would consider testifying in front of the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack if the panel invited him. He made the remarks during a political event in New Hampshire earlier today.
If there was an invitation to participate, I would consider it. But you've heard me mention the Constitution a few times this morning. On the Constitution, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. And any invitation to be directed to me, I would have to reflect on the unique role that I was serving in as Vice President. It'd be unprecedented in history for a Vice President to be summoned to testify on Capitol Hill. But as I said, I don't want to prejudge. If there's ever any formal invitation rendered to us, we'd give it due consideration.
For more, let's bring in CBS News political reporter Zach Hudak. He was at the event with Pence and joins us from Manchester, New Hampshire. Zach, this was quite a newsy breakfast, and this really seems to be the first time that we've heard former Vice President Pence signal that he would consider testifying. How significant is that, and do you get the sense that he really wants to?
Nicole, it's very significant if you listen to what the members of the committee have been telling us for a year. As you know, you and I and the rest of our team on the Hill, we have been asking Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, the rest of the committee, do they want to talk to Mike Pence? Do they want to talk to Donald Trump himself? And they keep saying they're open to it. They're leaving it on the table. They're still discussing it, et cetera. But the point is they've left that open. And I think in some ways they've been waiting for a signal like this from the former vice president that he might be open to talking. Now, the committee is not commenting on that, but it is significant for him to come out and publicly say that. He has not done that over this year and a half plus since January 6th. Why did he wait so long? I don't know, but it seems that something has changed that he was willing to make that statement.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you a little bit more about that because, as you know, the former vice president has been very measured in his response to the events of January 6th. So why do you think he's bringing up this idea of testifying now?
Well, Nicole, as we've seen more and more information come out from the January 6th hearings,
I think that there's a possibility that he sees some public perception changing about that day and is starting to see his role that day potentially as more of a political upside, that he can show that he was heroic in the face of a lot of adversity on that day. He made a statement about it today, indirectly, talking about facing pressures and being brave, and said something along the lines of, I know that firsthand. So he's reaching a point where if he's thinking about running in 2024, which if you're coming to New Hampshire right now, there's a chance that you are, this is going to come up and he's going to have a stance on it. Now, I will add that we don't know what the committee has been doing. We don't know if they've amped up their talks with him to try to get him to talk to them, if that's changed his view on this. But it is nonetheless pretty significant that he's left it on the table, even though he really hedged it significantly.
The former vice president also addressed the FBI search on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. What did he say about that?
Nicole, the first thing he said is how unprecedented it was, and how even though he was traveling with his wife at the time when the news broke, he felt the need to quickly issue a response and say that. But he went on to say that he, like most Republicans, wants answers from the Justice Department. He repeatedly name-dropped Merrick Garland, saying that he wants to know why this search had to be done, particularly in the nature it was done. He did say something, however, along the lines of, the truth will eventually come out, or we will have to allow the truth to eventually come out. So like a lot of the things that Mike Pence says and said today, there's that little bit of a hedge in there where he does sound like he's open to the possibility that there was something nefarious that he'll have to later condemn, even though he, in the moment, doesn't want to jump to conclusions and turn off former Trump supporters who might be looking to him right now.
And I know you alluded to this earlier, but this politics and eggs breakfast in New Hampshire is often a rite of passage for presidential hopefuls. Did the former vice president hint at a potential run?
Nicole, he did. He made a statement about how he has not spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, but he could, at some point in the future, spend a lot of time in New Hampshire. And that was in response to a question about his support for New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary status. So he will not come out and say he's going to run or that he's even considering running, but he is, leaving on the table the possibility that he will be back here a whole lot more in 2023 and 2024.
Zach Hudak, political reporter for CBS News. Thanks for helping us read some of those tea leaves.
Thank you, Nicole.
For a look at the GOP field for 2024, Neil Levesque joins us now. He is the executive director of the New Hampshire Institute of Politics and Political Library at St. Anselm College and co-host of the New Hampshire Live podcast. Neil, thanks so much for joining us. I want to continue with former Vice President Mike Pence. You were at his speech this morning. What were your takeaways? Do you get the sense he's going to run in 2024?
I definitely get the sense he's going to run in 2024. And I think what he was communicating to voters here in the first-in-the-nation primary state was that he is a social conservative and he has a long track record of being that way. And he's firm with that. And he's committed to his country and his Constitution. And so I think he avoided a lot of the other hot topics that are out there and sort of went straight for that. And I think it was a communication that was well received, and we had a very large audience. He spoke from the podium right behind me.
Yeah, I was going to say, do Granite Staters want to see him get in?
I think that Granite Staters want to see a lot of candidates get in and test them and see what they're all about and see if they can carry this country forward into the future. And so I think that that was part of his message today. Again, very well received. We had a sellout crowd. And a lot of media was here as well. And we've had a lot of candidates in New Hampshire just in the past week and throughout the summer. So this first-in-the-nation primary is alive and well. There's a lot of people running, a lot of people out there campaigning.
And, of course, one of those who could potentially run again is the former president, who has hinted at a possible 2024 bid. Do you think there's an appetite for another potential Trump run?
Well, I definitely think that in the Republican Party, amongst Republican diehard voters, he would poll very, very well and probably dominate the field. There's no doubt about that. But I wonder whether or not he will get in. If he does get in, when will he ever say he's not getting in? We really don't know. But remember, in New Hampshire, too, the largest voting bloc are independent voters, undeclareds, as we call them. And they can actually take a ballot on the Republican side or the Democratic side during our primary. So you have to contend with this very large block of people who are more reflective of the general election. And so I'm waiting to see whether or not he's capable of doing that.
Yeah, and I think in some recent polling, he was kind of running even with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in a potential matchup in the Granite State. What does the Florida governor in particular need to do to distinguish himself as a potential front-running GOP candidate if he and the former president run?
Well, I think whatever he's doing, he'll do more of, because obviously it's a pretty good recipe. And he is sort of riding a tightrope with the former president. It must be very tight down there in Florida between these two potential candidates. And certainly they're very much alike as far as their messaging and the themes of their campaigns. So it's a tight place. And remember, I think with both of them, there's only room for one on a ballot. And so I think it's a difficult place to be. But I think a lot of Republican voters are probably looking at DeSantis as potentially the future, but we'll see. He has yet to come into the Granite State. We're waiting for him to do so. Most likely he'd wait until after the midterm election, but a lot of anticipation, certainly, for Governor DeSantis.
All right. Well, Neil Levesque, we will leave it there. Of course, a lot of talk about presidential politics, but we know you've got a big primary coming up next month as well. So I'm sure we'll be asking you back. Thanks so much again for your time.
Thank you, Nicole.
Investigations continue into the January 6th Capitol assault, with members of the Oath Keepers anti-government group set to appear in court next week. What we know about the case, including the seriousness of the charges they face. Plus, early voting is underway for New York's primary elections Tuesday. We take a look at some of the key races to keep an eye on. You're streaming CBS News.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
when weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me?
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Nicole Kelly, and here's a look at some of our top stories. Incumbent Congresswoman Liz Cheney lost the GOP primary for Wyoming's only House seat to Trump-endorsed candidate Harriet Hageman. Cheney won 73% of the vote when she ran for re-election in 2020, but garnered less than 30% last night. Meanwhile, Alaska incumbent Lisa Murkowski and former Governor Sarah Palin both advanced to the general election in the state's Senate and House races, respectively. Alaska uses the ranked choice method rather than party primaries, so the top 4 vote-getters advance to the November race. And Rudy Giuliani appeared before a special grand jury in Georgia today to testify in the state's 2020 presidential election investigation. Natalie Brand has more on what the former attorney for Donald Trump said.
Rudy Giuliani spent hours in an Atlanta courthouse before a grand jury as part of a criminal investigation looking into election interference in 2020. He briefly spoke to reporters before his testimony.
Talk about this until it's over. It's a grand jury, and grand juries, as I recall, a secret.
Do you believe President Trump is the ultimate target of this investigation?
I'm not going to comment on the grand jury investigation.
Giuliani is among a group of allies of former President Donald Trump identified as targets of the Fulton County prosecutor's investigation. The former New York City mayor, who served as a personal attorney to then President Trump, became one of his closest advisors in the aftermath of the 2020 election. He publicly made baseless claims of election fraud in key battleground states, including Georgia.
For example, the recount being done in Georgia will tell us nothing, because these fraudulent ballots will just be counted again.
This special grand jury was formed in the beginning of this year. The Fulton County District Attorney says the investigation was spurred by the January phone call between Mr. Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
Anthony Michael Kreis, who teaches law at Georgia State University, says the DA appears to be getting closer to the former president's innermost circle.
I doubt that if a conspiracy case was brought in Georgia, that it would be brought without the former president involved, because he was a linchpin in all of this.
Giuliani's attorneys had tried to delay his testimony because he underwent heart surgery last month, but the judge ordered him to appear even though he could not travel by plane. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, Washington.
As we've been reporting, former Vice President Mike Pence says he would consider testifying before the January 6 House Select Committee if invited. Several of Pence's aides have already spoken to the panel. For more, I want to turn to my colleague, CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarlane. And Scott, we know the Select Committee isn't commenting on the former vice president's remarks, but what is the likelihood of them asking him to testify?
Yeah, Nicole, it's really interesting where he made that statement at the Politics and Eggs event in New Hampshire, where a lot of people are thinking about 2024. So there's both a political and a practical impact to what he said. The practical impact is kind of unclear. Does the committee even want to talk to Mike Pence at this point? They've left the door open, just like Mike Pence left the door open today. But the committee is wrapping up its work. I mean, they've got weeks left till the end of the session, till Election Day, a few weeks in the backside during the lame duck session. Then this committee expires at about the end of the calendar year. So there's a finite amount of time. And they have spoken to so many people in Pence's inner circle and so many other stakeholders who were here at the Capitol January 6th. It's unclear what they would yield from Mike Pence that they don't know already. But the door is open, both from the committee and from Mike Pence. So the political impact perhaps is more immediate and more clear. Mike Pence entertaining publicly the idea of sitting with the January 6th committee is another break with former President Trump, who again used the phrase hacks and thugs to refer to the January 6th committee, which he continues to call the Unselect Committee. Breaking with President Trump, even in small ways, even in subtle ways, is noteworthy politically at this moment in time.
And in other January 6 news, Oath Keepers members are due in court Monday on seditious conspiracy charges. What more do we know about that case?
I've got that date circled on my calendar, Nicole. This is the highest level U.S. Capitol attack case so far. This group of accused seditious conspirators who are accused of raising arms and raising money and raising a plan ahead of January 6th. They're in court for a pre-trial hearing Monday ahead of a September trial date in this case. I'm told from a defense lawyer associated with the case that they're going to consider asking for yet another delay in the trial. It's been 19 months since January 6th. They may try to delay the trial further, and it's possible, they argue, the coverage of the Mar-a-Lago search from last Monday might inflame or potentially bias jurors. They have made arguments before that the jury is too inflamed to have a trial now, and the judge has swatted away those arguments. Likely they'll try again on Monday. But as things stand now, this highest level case, which has been synthesized into the January 6th Select Committee hearings as well, is set to happen just down the road from the Capitol in mid-September.
And then turning to New York, early voting is underway in the state's primary elections this Tuesday. Walk us through what you find significant in some of these races.
They're working the phones all day today ahead of Tuesday's swan song of America's primary season in New York. Here's the thing. There's been some focus in recent weeks and recent months about this unique intra-party battle in Manhattan between two chairmen of two committees, Chairman Carolyn Maloney of the House Oversight Committee, Chairman Jerry Nadler of the Judiciary Committee. They're going to go head-to-head. It's going to be a battle. One of them's going to lose. Some senior member, powerful member of the House is done in January because of that. But I'm looking at three other races in particular. The New York 10th district is an interesting one. Mondaire Jones, the young congressman who was kind of boxed out of his current district when they redrew the lines, chose to run in the New York 10th. And for a hot minute, former Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York City was in that race. But look out for Dan Goldman. There's a debate tonight in the New York 10th district. Goldman is now viewed as a frontrunner as he's secured in this district the prized New York Times endorsement. Some recent polling shows him ahead of this rather large race, this large pack of candidates. Dan Goldman's top-line issue in this campaign is preserving democracy, the maintenance of democracy as it's under threat from election denialists and from Trumpism, according to his campaign. What a distinctive top-line issue in a year when so many Democrats are racing towards kitchen table issues and inflation issues as they're most prominent on the campaign trail. Look out for Dan Goldman Tuesday. He's also a face some people recognize as an attorney who helped with the first Trump impeachment in the U.S. House. Also keeping an eye on the New York 19th, a little further upstate, the Hudson Valley, the mid-Hudson Valley, Ulster County, Dutchess County. That's a special election Tuesday. The Ulster County executive running against the Dutchess County executive on the other side of the Hudson River. This is likely a red district, but Democrats say it's a canary in the coal mine race Tuesday, Nicole. If the Democrat, Pat Ryan of Ulster County, keeps it within 5 to 7 points, could be an indication Democrats are a bit more bullish, have better odds than previously thought moving toward November. And also, it's worth mentioning the New York 17th district, another redrawn map. Sean Patrick Maloney, the chairman of the Democratic Campaign Committee, raced towards that district. He's running there. He was accused of boxing out one or some of his colleagues to get that district to run in. And of course, as he runs the Democratic Campaign Committee, His critics say it didn't look good that he boxed out other candidates trying to win high office. It's a potentially competitive general election there. The primary, though, may be easier sailing Tuesday for Sean Patrick Maloney.
And then very quickly, I just want to turn to some other big matchups. We're seeing some tighter polls in the Senate races in Wisconsin and Florida. Meantime, you've got the National Republican Senatorial Committee cutting some of its ad buys in other critical battlegrounds. What's going on here?
Keeping a close eye on Florida in particular. Val Demings, the congresswoman, the impeachment manager in the first impeachment of Donald Trump, trying to oust Marco Rubio. Some polls show optimism for Democrats. I spoke with the Demings team today. That's a campaign going to push the Inflation Reduction Act, the kitchen table issue, at every stop she makes, seemingly, on the governmental side as well, Nicole. And as a congresswoman, she expects to talk about that a lot during the rest of this August recess.
All right. Well, a lot to keep your eye on. Scott McFarland, thanks so much. Former U.S. Representative T.J. Cox has been indicted on counts of money laundering and fraud. The California Democrat was arrested Tuesday and faces 28 federal charges. Prosecutors say Cox obtained more than $1.7 million through different fraud schemes from 2013 to 2018. They also claim he filed false bank statements to receive mortgage loans and lied to lenders about the use of the property. If convicted on all charges, Cox could face up to 55 years in prison and $1.5 million in fines. Congresswoman Liz Cheney's primary defeat in Wyoming leaves lots of questions about the future for her and the Republican Party. We ask a former three-term senator from the state what he makes of her loss and what of course, though. Sorry, and what may be next.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
4 House Republicans who voted to impeach former President Trump after the January 6th riot have now gone on to lose their primary races. That's out of 10 GOP House members who made that vote, with another 4 set to retire. South Carolina Congressman Tom Rice lost his primary to State Representative Russell Fry in June. Rice's opponent was backed by former President Trump. In Michigan, earlier this month, pro-impeachment Congressman Peter Meijer also lost his Republican primary to a candidate endorsed by former President Trump and John Gibbs. Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler faced a similar fate in Washington state. She conceded last week to Trump-endorsed candidate Joe Kent in her primary bid. And in Wyoming last night, Congresswoman Liz Cheney lost her re-election bid. She has since pledged to make sure former President Trump doesn't reach the Oval Office again. For more on the fallout from Cheney's defeat, former 3-term U.S. Senator from Wyoming, Alan Simpson, joins us now. Senator, it's an honor to have you. You have a saying that everything is political in Wyoming except politics, which is personal. Was Liz Cheney's defeat personal, in your view?
No, it was a difference between a revenge-filled, hatred person, vitriol, and the bigger picture for her is a simple one. People say, "Oh, what happened to her?" I'll tell you what'll happen to her. She's smart, she's brilliant, she knows history, she knows media, she knows exactly what she's doing, and she knows exactly where she's going. And I don't know where that is, but she does, I can tell you that. This is not Wanda Wallflower. This is one substantial human being is going to just terrorize the great one down there in the mar-a-lago.
I know you are a longtime friend of the Cheney family. You were elected to Congress the same year as Dick Cheney back in 1978. How does he view this?
Well, Dick is a pragmatic guy. We ran together. I ran for the U.S. Senate. He ran for the House. He's very proud of her. And so is Lynn, and Lynn was involved with government or the humanities. This is not some wandering soul who's thinking of maybe running for as an independent or Republican. This is someone who loves the history of the United States, wants to protect it, is so sick and tired of someone who lost an election by 8 million votes and still trying to dig through the rubbish. And a lot of people joining. But every day that goes by, as long as Liz Cheney is in action, a little bit of chipping is going on under the pedestal of the great one, peeling the onion right off the skins of the great unwashed down there.
Do you recognize the Republican Party anymore?
Not around here. My father was United States Senator and governor. I was in the legislature. My brother was in the legislature. My son, my uncles, and if I were running this year, I'd get eaten alive. You don't have to worry about the legacy of Cheney and how sad we would be, because that's over. These are people who came to Wyoming 5 or 10 years ago from somewhere because they didn't like minorities or they didn't like vulnerable people. They hate gays and lesbians. This is a hatred community. When Liz came up, they censured her, but one of the precinct committee men was using the most extraordinary Anglo-Saxon terms. They never censured him at all. Said he could have used a different term, perhaps, but let me tell you, this is Zooland out here. Fortunately, Trump endorsed several people out here, and the only one, of course, which was doubtful, which the Cheney phrase.
Do you blame the former president?
Do I? She says she's the one who's going to get involved with the great task. And the great task for her is not doing anything to Trump. She doesn't hate Trump. He hates her. There's a lot of difference. She is a lover of history and America and can't stand to see the contortions that this man is going through with his egotistical mania and his twisted logic of losing 8 million votes lost and then slapdashing around in there as if he's somebody stole his toy tractor out of his sandbox.
This morning, Congresswoman Cheney said that she is thinking about a run for president in 2024 and will make a decision in the coming months. What would you advise her to do? Should she get in?
Well, my wife, a woman I've been living with married all that time for 68 years, she says she's going to run. I hadn't arrived at that, but I can tell you one thing. If she is, she's going to be a very formidable something, because she's never going to get. She is dedicated to America. If there's anybody to unravel the underwear of the Donald, it's this woman, and she ain't going to quit. She's not through, and it's not about sinking a fang in his leg. It's about the certainty that he'll never get near the White House unless he's with a tour group.
Well, former Senator Al Simpson, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. You bet.
We're going to take a quick break, which means you have a couple of minutes to download the free CBS News app on all of your devices. You can catch live local coverage from across the country from all of our CBS stations. And while you're at it, check out Paramount Plus. We've got a mountain of content for you to stream there as well, including your favorite shows, movies, and sports.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
The social media platform TikTok says it will prevent content creators from posting paid political messages ahead of the November midterm elections. TikTok banned all political ads in 2019, but campaigns have gotten around that by paying influencers to promote political issues. The company says internal teams will monitor for paid political content and collaborate with outside partners to find and remove violating posts. Facebook's parent company Meta and Twitter have also announced actions to restrict new political ads before the midterm elections. The Department of Education has canceled $3.9 billion in student debt for 208,000 borrowers. The debt forgiveness specifically applies to students who attended the now-defunct ITT Technical Institute between 2005 and 2016. Before it closed, the school was the subject of several investigations over its recruiting tactics, lending policies, and job placement figures. Roughly 43 million U.S. students have federal education loans. President Biden is expected to announce by the end of the month if he will cancel student debts more broadly. Well, that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/redandblue.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before. That's correct. Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome to CBS Mornings.
This morning we're going to begin with some good news.
Just follow me, I'll lead the way.
There's always something new under the sun.
Oh, you just put me in a good mood.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's a look at the top stories we are following right now. Rudy Giuliani faces a grand jury in Georgia as part of an investigation into interference in the 2020 election. We'll bring you the latest details from inside the courtroom. Former Vice